When I was in college, I went through a period where I was enamored of Shakespeare's sonnets. A sonnet is a poem of 14 lines that has a very strict rhyming structure, and Shakespeare was a master of sonnets. My favorite sonnet is Sonnet 65, which goes like this, starts out like this. Since brass, nor stone, nor earth, nor boundless sea, but sad mortality o'ersways their power, how can beauty have a plea whose action is no stronger than a flower? What the poet is asking is, how can something as small and fragile as a flower survive in a harsh and cold world? And especially, he's asking, how can love, which is so fragile and so fleeting, survive in this cold world? Everything passes away. Flowers fade, grasses wither, and lovers die, and even stones break down into dust. Time destroys everything, especially beautiful things. So how can love even survive? So the poet meditates on this, and at the last two verses of the sonnet, he comes up with his answer, which is this. O none, unless this miracle hath might, that in black ink my love may still shine bright. In other words, the poem itself is the way that the poet's love is going to survive into the future. People will keep this poem, keep reading this poem, and so in that way, the poet's love is immortal. For the poet, the poem is immortality. I mention this poem because it reminds me of our gospel lesson today, which is the Beatitudes of Jesus. Jesus is speaking to his disciples and to the crowd, and he teaches them the Beatitudes. Blessed are you who are poor. Blessed are you who are hungry. Blessed are you who weep. The Beatitudes turn the world upside down, and they help us see things from the eyes of the poor. Now, in this world of relentless competition, how do the poor survive? In this dog-eat-dog world, how do the hungry make it from day to day? In this cold and heartless world, how do grieving people manage to get up in the morning? Or to paraphrase Shakespeare, how can a poor person have a plea whose influence is no stronger than a flower? It's a tough world. If you're rich, the world runs to your door and wants to know what they can do for you. But if you're poor, the world turns its back on you. If you have plenty to eat, you don't worry about what's in the cupboard. But if you're hungry, you're always thinking about where your next meal is going to come from. How are you going to survive? How are you going to have enough calories to keep warm? When everything's going well, life is good. But when you lose a loved one, everything falls apart. Everyone forgets you. So in the Beatitudes, Jesus is looking at life from the bottom up. He's seeing things from people who live at the bottom. He's trying to give us eyes to see things from their perspective. Imagine what it was like for Jesus' listeners to hear these words. They were poor people. They were peasants, farmers trying to scratch out a living, trying to survive. There were people who were clubbed by the Roman soldiers and taxed by the authorities, beaten down at every turn, forgotten and discarded by the powers that be. But now in Jesus, here was someone who saw them. He saw their poverty. He saw their ragged clothes and their crumbling homes and skinny kids. So imagine what it was like for them to be seen by Jesus, to be validated by this rabbi. He sees us. He knows us. He knows what it's like for us. He actually gives us God's blessing. Finally, someone who understands us. No wonder the crowds came to Jesus. Blessed are you who are poor now. Blessed are you who weep now. Blessed are you who are hungry now. The Beatitudes are the encapsulation of Jesus' ethics. This is what it means to be a moral person, to remember the poor and the oppressed. This is the core of the gospel message, the core of the whole Bible. In the Old Testament, God gave Moses a commandment to keep the Sabbath, not just for the wealthy and for the landowners, but also for the workers and the slaves and the foreigners. The poor people need to rest too. God gave Moses a commandment to leave the gleanings in the field and the harvest, so the poor would always have something to eat. And God gave Moses a commandment to love one's neighbor as oneself, so that neighborliness would always be the standard in society. And the prophets of the Old Testament refused to let the people of Israel forget about these things. They kept reminding them. Blessed are the poor, the hungry, the grieving. That message runs all the way through the Bible, through the Beatitudes and beyond. If there's one word that sums up the Beatitudes, I think it's empathy. Empathy means being able to see things from another person's point of view. Empathy is the ability to feel what another person is feeling. And in the Beatitudes, Jesus is trying to teach us empathy, what it looks like from someone else's point of view. Now, being empathetic isn't easy. I often feel overwhelmed by the needs of the world, and trying to empathize with everyone who's suffering is hard. How much can one person do? How much can I do, especially in a world that is so vast and so complex? And that's why we have collective action to help the poor, like Episcopal Relief and Development, which is an agency of the Episcopal Church, which helps people around the world who are in trouble. People who are dealing with earthquakes or floods or famine or other disasters, medical relief. It's all part of the work of ERD. So by working together, by working as a church, we can make a difference more than we can do individually. That's also why we have government agencies to help those who are disadvantaged. People who, through no fault of their own, are poor or hungry or disadvantaged, are served through government agencies that can do more than any of us can do individually. And as a Christian, as a follower of Jesus, I believe in these programs because I think they flow directly from the Beatitudes that Jesus taught. Blessed are the poor, blessed are the hungry, blessed are those who are struggling. Don't forget them. You know, many people have noticed that the church has often been the contrast to our capitalistic society. You know, on the one hand, we believe in free enterprise, and each person working as hard as they can to improve themselves as much as they can. But the church has offered a contrast in saying, don't forget the poor, don't forget the needy. And those two things have worked together to make society successful. One of my favorite charities is American Friends of the Episcopal Diocese of Jerusalem. The Episcopal Church has churches in the Holy Land, the Diocese of Jerusalem, and they have programs to help the poor and needy in that area. They support medical services, educational programs, relief efforts, and they provide supplies to El Ali Hospital, which is a hospital in Gaza. So they're right in the middle of the need. And I feel like working through them, our donation can make a difference. The Beatitudes, they turn the world upside down. Since brass nor stone nor earth nor boundless sea, but sad mortality o'ersways their power. How can a poor person have a plea whose influence is no stronger than a flower? Oh, none unless this miracle hath might, that in our love we might help them in their plight.